NAX.
And a good afternoon. Welcome back to your afternoon 5-State Farm Report. Danielle Drotzman, your host here for 570 WNAX. Thanks for tuning in here today on this Thursday. Well, our first guest today is Bethany Johnston. I have her with me here on the phone. So she is a Nebraska Extension Livestock Educator. So we're excited to get her on. So Bethany, thanks for joining us on WNAX. And how are you today?
Doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we're excited to get you on and learn a little bit more about grazing in these midsummer times we are in throughout Nebraska. So, like I said, we've hit midsummer and it seems that parts of Nebraska have gotten some rain, I guess, since we last visited. So, are producers still kind of as concerned about pastures and grazing as they were a month or two ago?
Yeah, so rains have been spotty and some areas have seen some relief, but there's other areas that have still been impacted by the drought. And if you're in an area that has a lot of cool season pastures, you might still be concerned with the grass production because the rains may have came too late.
Gotcha. And I've heard the term trigger dates, I guess, being used a lot when talking about grazing. So maybe, like, what exactly is that?
Yeah, so a trigger date is something that we can actually plan and put on our calendars. And then when those dates hit, we can go back and look at our precipitation records and check that with the average. And that helps us estimate how our grass is going to respond as far as forage production. And the thing to remember with trigger dates is we don't just want to put them on our calendar and look at it and be like, gosh, I'm in a drought and go about our business. But the trigger dates are meant that if we fall below a certain level, we're going to trigger some action. So we're going to think about some drought management options, whether it's selling cows or delaying turnout or buying hay. But it gives us a chance to start planning ahead before it hits and we're out of grass.
Gotcha. And I guess how exactly do you use trigger dates, or how would you kind of determine them? Is there like a set date for both cool and warm season grasses? Does it just kind of depend on how much precipitation you get, the conditions, or I guess maybe explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so we set trigger dates and usually we'll do cool season grasses and warm season grasses. And our grasses grow rapidly at different times. And you can think of this as if you had a dryland field and if you planted rye in one field and corn in another. If I want my rye crop to do really well, it's a cool season. So I want rains in the fall and then rains in the spring. And if I have a corn crop, it can be dry all fall and dry in the spring. But as long as I get rains in the summer, because corn is a warm season, that's when it's really going to respond. And so trigger dates for our cool season grasses, usually we'll start looking at precipitation records April 1st. And we're going to go back all the way from October through March and look at our precipitation records and see if they're below normal. And if that's the case, that means that we're probably going to have lower production. And we've seen this, right? Our smooth brome pastures are short. Our hay meadows are short this year, and that's just because we had such a dry fall and such a dry spring. But our warm seasons, we can have a mid-June trigger date for those. And as long as we get rain kind of in that June and then to the first part of July, that can really impact those and affect their production. And, after July 15th, even if we get a lot of rain, the warm seasons have kind of checked out and they're done. So we've had years where, 1st of August, we got a bunch of rain, but it really didn't influence the production of those warm season grasses that much.
Gotcha. So something we should all kind of keep in mind here as we, move throughout the grazing season. And I'm sure it's very useful to help make management decisions, like you mentioned. So I guess kind of switching topics here a little bit, one thing that we should watch out for here as we move throughout the grazing season is just poisonous plants too. It's always a possibility that our cattle or livestock could eat something that I guess they're not supposed to.
Yeah, and poisonous plants are out there, and normally we don't have problems with them. Usually they're not palatable, and grazing animals will avoid them. But in drought situations, or if you're overstocked, cattle run out of palatable things to eat, and so all that's left are sometimes those poisonous weeds. And a lot of times they're green, and so they'll go and actually consume those. And we kind of have a variety across Nebraska. And there's a really nice extension publication. It's called Nebraska Plants Toxic to Livestock on Range, Pasture, and Crops. And you can Google that, and it brings up a nice PDF. But it shows the different plants. It shows what part of the state they're located in, and then the symptoms and what you can do for that as well. But some of the ones that are probably, we think about them are like water or spotted hemlock. We know those are poisonous. But then there's other ones like milkweeds and chokecherries. The whorled milkweed can be toxic, and then chokecherry leaves can be toxic as well. So I know there's been examples where there is an extreme drought and a producer had yearlings in a pasture, and he had a corner that had chokecherries in it, and the only thing that was green were those leaves on the chokecherries, and the yearlings ate those off, and they had some trouble with that. So there's I think 17 different ones in Nebraska that are kind of key ones that we sometimes have to worry about.
And when you suspect poisoning like that, is it usually something that you walk out there one day and you just see a couple dead cattle laying around, or does it usually affect them slow enough to where you could treat it, if you know what I mean, or is there any management things there?
Yeah, and the hard part is every plant has a different toxin in it, and it affects that animal differently. So some of them affect the nervous system, some of them affect the heart, and the symptoms are pretty vague, right? So it might be labored breathing or weakness or loss of appetite or trembling. So the best thing to do is to call your local veterinarian that you work with and have them come out. But a lot of times you might just find them dead because some of these plants can kill within, a couple hours, and other ones it might take longer. But I would reach out to your vet just to make sure that it is a poisonous plant and not something else that's affecting your herd.
Yeah. And also another thing just to keep in mind is that, if you ever have any questions on whether it be trigger dates or maybe identifying a poisonous plant or just, any questions in general, I mean, you guys are always there to reach out to. And if you can't answer the question, you can always connect them to somebody who can.
Yes, and we have extension offices locally, so you should be able to reach out to your local extension office. And like you said, if we don't know the answer, we can find someone that does, whether that's a specialist or another educator. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.
Perfect. All right. And anything upcoming for you guys in extension, I guess that we should kind of keep on our radar here throughout the rest of the summer.
Yeah, so one thing is extreme heat starting to kind of roll through. So when we have those events, we need to think about our animals and how to keep them cool. And if you're in a feedlot situation, there's some articles out on that, and we have some specialists you could reach out to as well. And then the other thing we have coming up, August 4th and 5th in Kearney, Nebraska, is going to be the annual Nebraska Grazing Conference. So they have this grazing conference every year, and you can sign up for a day, you can sign up for both days, but they've really reduced the rates, and they have some great speakers there. And then students can get in free as well, but you do have to to register. So make sure that you sign up for that. But it's August 4th and 5th in Kearney, and they have a pretty spectacular set of presenters this year.
Great. Yeah, sounds like a great educational event. Well, Bethany, we're kind of coming up here to the end of our time. So I guess, did I miss anything or anything to wrap up here on today?
No, I just hope everybody catches some timely rains and has a good season.
Absolutely. All right. Bethany, thank you for joining us here today and taking some time to educate us. So you have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. That's Bethany Johnston. She is Nebraska Extension, a livestock systems educator, joining us here today on your afternoon 5-State Farm Report. Well, we'll take a quick break here. We'll take a look at some weather, and then we'll look at your markets here at the bottom of the hour. So stay tuned.
Local issues important to you are important to us. Catch the Weekend File, Sunday morning at 7, right here on